This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
China's Chang'e 5 spacecraft successfully returns to Earth with rock and soil samples from the moon. At least 17 Nigerian students rescued from the hands of Boko Haram abductors, but 2 reported dead. And we take a look at Tunisia 10 years after major protests in the country. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program. Coming up in your business news, South Africa's embattled carrier announces a new board of directors. And in your sports, South African Toyota Gazoo racing team unveils its driver lineup for the 2021 Dakar Rally. French President Emmanuel Macron has tested positive for coronavirus, his office has announced. The president's official residence, the Élysée Palace, has confirmed Macron's COVID status after displaying symptoms. President Macron will be required to self-isolate for 7 days, but will continue with duties in quarantine. There's a new chapter in space history in China, where the country's Chang'e 5 lunar probe successfully returned to Earth a few hours ago. The mission, which began late last month, brought back the first samples of rock and debris that humans have collected from the moon since 1976. President Xi Jinping has congratulated the entire team behind Chang'e 5, saying the mission marks a major step forward for China's aerospace industry. Our reporter Wu Lei has more from Beijing Aerospace Control Center.
Touching down in North China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, Chang'e 5's return module finally brought its lunar samples back to Earth. Then it was up to the ground team to find the capsule in the designated area, which they did about 30 minutes later.
I here declare China's lunar exploration project Chang'e 5 a complete success.
The Beijing Aerospace Control Center erupted with celebration and excitement. Chinese engineers and scientists taking photos to remember this historical moment, their 10 years of effort finally paying off.
The Chang'e 5 mission is the end of China's previous lunar exploration projects, including orbiting, landing, and returning. But this is also a new start of China's further lunar projects.
Chang'e 5 is the most complicated and challenging mission in China's space exploration history. It has made several technological breakthroughs on lunar sample return. Another thing that sets China's mission apart is the age of the samples gathered, possibly much younger than those gathered in previous American and Soviet missions.
We will conduct deep study of these precious lunar samples, and it is for sure we will cooperate with global scientists and organizations on the scientific research.
The capsule will be brought back to Beijing very soon, and the lunar samples will be handed over to scientists eager to begin their scientific work. With a solid experience gained from this mission, China plans to conduct more lunar sample missions, as well as manned lunar missions, and build a scientific station on the moon in the coming years. Wu Lei, CGTN, Beijing.
As the Chang'e 5 mission becomes the latest milestone in China's space history, the country is also gearing up for further space exploration in the future. Our reporter Shen Chihuan has the details.
The mission is significant on its own, as it's first of its kind in more than 4 decades to bring back lunar sample. Besides Chang'e 5, China's Space Center is also monitoring the Tianwen-1 Mars probe and Chang'e 4 moon rover. The Tianwen-1 is expected to arrive at the Red Planet in February 2021. China is also planning to send the Chang'e 6 probe to the moon's right about in the next few years, and it's slotted to land astronauts on the moon by 2030. Meanwhile, NASA has been working to land astronauts on the moon by 2024, and Russia plans to send its own lunar probe by 2027.
China has been preparing for research using the moon rocks. The samples will be transported to Beijing, where the country's first lunar sample laboratory has been set up. Experts have designed special rooms and equipment for unsealing and storing the materials, and the lab meets the strict requirements of processing and working with them. The European Commission has said it will not release its €90 million support to Ethiopia. The Commission says the Ethiopian government has to adhere to its demands first. Some of the ultimatums include allowing full humanitarian access for relief workers, restoring communication lines, among others. However, the withholding of the EU budget does not affect the humanitarian programs in Ethiopia. Let's cross over to CGTN's Girum Chala. He's in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia for us. And Patrick Oyet will be joining us from South Sudan. Girum, the European Union has suspended the budgetary support for Ethiopia over the situation in the Tigray region. What is the government's reaction to this?
Beatrice, the Ethiopian authorities are saying that the decision by the European Union is disappointing and is not considering the existing situation of the country on the ground, especially in the northern part of it. And they say that after the conclusion of the law enforcement mission in the north, the Ethiopian government has been trying to address some of the critical issues, especially the humanitarian issues on the ground, understanding the fact that this is not an easy job has been the problem from the European Union side. So the Ethiopian authorities are saying that its sovereignty, the country's sovereignty, is not up for any negotiation. And what has been done when it comes to the law enforcement mission should be rather appreciated than suspending any budget issues. When it comes to the European Union's demand of access to humanitarian services and also access to civilians to cross borders if they seek refuge in a foreign country, the Ethiopian government authorities, especially top authorities in the foreign ministry, are saying that everything is being done at the moment as soon as possible. Things will also be calming down, especially with the effort of trying to return Ethiopians in Sudan camps is going to be completed soon. So disappointment is one thing that the Ethiopian authorities are talking about because of the suspension of the budget funding. But then again, complying with the European Union's demand is already underway, according to them, and will be finished as soon as possible.
Well, Girum, Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok recently visited Ethiopia, relaying his concerns about threats to Sudan's security along its border with Tigray. How has Ethiopia dealt with Sudan's concerns?
Well, first of all, as you remember, last week, Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok of Sudan was here. He had his talk with Ethiopian counterpart Abiy Ahmed himself. Their conversation, of course, was about the situation in the north and also addressing Sudan's concern of security. By the way, Sudan is at the moment holding thousands of Ethiopians in its refugee camps. Bordering towns of Sudan are being burdened at the moment. But Ethiopian authorities are saying that the government of Ethiopia and Sudan are working hand in hand to resolve the situation. And also, Ethiopia has reassured Sudan that the situation in the border will be calming down day by day because the active military mission has now been concluded, and there is no reason why any Sudanese government official should be worried about the situation. But the law enforcement mission is going to continue as hunting of TPLF leadership is continuing. So Sudan is also supportive of this matter. Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has been heard saying that he had fruitful conversations with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and this conversation is going to help resolve the refugee situation in their country in order to return Ethiopians who are willingly returning back to their country. So this is what we know so far, and Ethiopian authorities are saying that Sudan remains to be a loyal partner to their quest of enforcing law in this country.
Girum Chala joining us there from Addis Ababa. Let's now turn to Nigeria, where we have an update on the plight of over 300 students kidnapped by Boko Haram. At least 17 of the students have been rescued. That's according to the Katsina state governor. Militants attacked an all-boys school on Friday. The kidnapping took place in northwestern Nigeria. Residents have been protesting as they seek the release of the students. The country's defense minister has pledged to rescue the remaining students. Well, CGTN's Phil Haza joins us with an update from Abuja. Phil, reports there indicating that rescue operations are continuing to save more than 300 students still missing since the Friday abduction. What more do we know about that situation?
Well, thank you, Beatrice. What we know indeed is that there's a confirmation that there is an ongoing military operation, but the talks, the details of what that operation is like is not very clear, and understandably so, because it's a sensitive mission. It's the kind of detail that security operatives will not want to go out there because that might mar the success of the operation. We also know from the governor of the state, Katsina State, Governor Masari, that the focus right now is not so much on the kinetic operation, military operation, but non-kinetic rescue operation, which that's what he calls it, and he explains that the non-kinetic one will have to be more of talks, negotiations with the abductors, whom they have cordoned off, and they are currently in talks with through an association called the Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria. So they are the ones more like negotiating between the government and the abductors. We're not clear what the ransom is or what the demands of these abductors are, but it is clear from the government that they're in talks with them. There is also a standby military operation just in case, but they will not fire even a gunshot because of the children that are there, because these abductors most likely will be using them as shields.
Well, Nigerian authorities say that they do know where the kidnapped schoolboys are. So what happens next then?
Well, so the governor says for now they're still in talks, and he has also debunked the claims about whether or not there is a direct link to the insurgents Boko Haram, even if there's released audio some days back, from one of the leaders of the sect, or the leader of the sect. But the government says from security information available to them, there is no direct link so far to the insurgents, that this particular attack has been coordinated by local bandits who have terrorized the northwestern region of the country for a long time now. So at the moment, since they've established the location of where these boys are kept, the governor says it's around Zamfara Forest, Zamfara borders, Katsina State. So it's just on the borders or into part of the other state, Zamfara State. Since they know the location, they say they have a tracking operation ongoing as well to know the exact location where these people are, and to ensure that they do not leave the country to Niger, which also borders Nigeria.
So, Phil, the authorities have established the exact location where the boys are being kept, and they are tracking that down. What exactly is the involvement of the federal government in this rescue operation, and how long could the operation take?
Well, it's a bit difficult to estimate how long this operation will take. The hopes right now is that it doesn't go in the same line that the previous attack in 2014 involving over 200 schoolgirls in Chibok, occurred. That's the hope. That's also the concerns and fears of parents, hundreds of parents and relatives of these kidnapped schoolboys this time. So. But the government says that they are doing all they can. There's constant meetings, security briefings with the federal government, with President Buhari, and also all the security apparatus of the country. We also know that the police have also sent a team. They're working hand in hand with all the military personnel from the Army, the Air Force, and of course the Navy. They're all putting their hands on deck to ensure. But what we know best is that now there's confirmation that they're talking with these abductors through the Cattle Breeders Association, and sooner or later I'm sure that the government will relate to the populace as to how soon these children or the schoolboys will be brought back.
Philly Haza joining us there from Abuja. Thank you. Let's now head to Libya, where the Red Crescent rescue team says that a boat carrying 30 people has capsized near Tripoli. So far, bodies of 4 children have been recovered, and the survivors are admitted at Zawiya Hospital. Officials are saying the children could have been aged between 5 and 10. The origin of the migrants aboard the vessel remains unknown.
So we went to the scene and found the bodies of 4 children. The ages of the children range from 5 to 10 years old. We are now continuing the search work from 27 kilometers, that is 17 miles, east of Zawiya to Sabratha in the west.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says the COVID-19 pandemic has united the nation in the strongest way since the struggle for democracy. President Ramaphosa was delivering a virtual keynote address in celebration of the National Day of Reconciliation. The aim of observing the day is to foster reconciliation among all race groups and to promote national unity in that country. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela filed this report.
The National Reconciliation Day is a day when South Africans recommit themselves to build bridges and celebrate the splendor of diversity as displayed in the languages, cultures, faiths, and histories. It is also a day on which South Africans also recall the injustices of the country's history, injustices that still exist over 2 decades since the dawn of democracy.
We have seen racial tensions flare up in several parts of our country, polarizing communities and opening old wounds. We may have come a long way from the days of institutionalized racism, but we are alive to the reality that for many, reconciliation is something they have yet to experience.
This year, the day is commemorated under the theme United in Action Against Racism, Gender-Based Violence and Other Intolerances.
We cannot achieve reconciliation for as long as the women of our country, who constitute half of our population, live in fear of gender-based violence. We must stand firm in our rejection of all forms of violence against women and children. We should be ashamed that women and children are afraid of being in the company of unfamiliar men, of being followed home by men, and of being beaten up, harassed, abused, raped, or even killed by men. It is not women and girls who must change their behavior. It is men who must change.
The president further emphasized that as long as the country has not overcome poverty, inequality, and underdevelopment that affects the majority, reconciliation will remain out of reach. The National Reconciliation Day comes at a time when South Africa, like the rest of the world, is battling the coronavirus pandemic.
This year, 2020, is one of the most challenging our young democracy has faced. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought great hardship and untold suffering to millions of our people. All South Africans, black and white, have come together to confront this grave threat. The support, the encouragement, and the solidarity extended to those in need has been a great inspiration.
Ramaphosa further implored South Africans to continue being united against the pandemic by ensuring adherence to the COVID-19 state of disaster rules and regulations. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Nigerian environmental experts express concern about inadequate local conservation programs. And a young Tunisian entrepreneur launches a foundation to connect youth to quality education.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria, like the rest of the world, continues to confront the impact of climate change. Reports say that environmental degradation has resulted in flooding, drought, famine, and several other natural disasters. With the rising population, it is believed the nation remains one of the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And as CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports, homegrown conservation measures have been limited.
Spanning over 3,200 acres of land is the Jabi Lake in the heart of Nigeria's capital, Abuja. This reservoir was first created to meet the water needs of residents. It now serves as a tourist attraction and relaxation site for visitors. Despite its aesthetic scenery, the disruption of content flow poses a threat to the ecosystem.
It doesn't flow, and that's a problem because there are so many, materials, contents, effluents, so many non-biodegradable items that get into that dam and they cannot flow out. And they try to decompose, they raise the temperature of the dams, and in some cases we've seen such dams, contributing to, global warming and even climate change. So issues like the management, cleaning up of the dam should be a serious concern to the managers of the Abuja city.
Nigeria, like the rest of the world, is facing the effects of climate change, including floods, droughts, and the outbreak of diseases. Experts lament that very little has been done to curtail harmful practices.
When you look at climate change as an issue, there are two critical things you need to look at in Nigeria. The issue of gas flaring in the Niger Delta. There is very limited being done by the government to end gas flaring in Nigeria. So personally, for me to take this government serious, we need to put an end to gas flaring. There is also the issue of desertification in the north. We need to stop to play lip service to desertification. There is the drying up of Lake Chad. Lake Chad is suddenly like a quarter of what it used to be. And there are policy papers, there have been conferences about what needs to be done.
Nigeria is Africa's most populous country with a 200 million strong population. With a growth rate of 3.2% yearly, the U.S. Census Bureau projects that the country's population could hit 402 million by 2050. Environmentalists warn that the impact of global warming may worsen with a weak conservation strategy. They advise government to intensify conservation efforts to mitigate against the impact of climate change. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Said Zarrouk is a Tunisian Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneur and author. During his academic years, Said excelled in his studies while pursuing his path in leadership with an entrepreneurial spirit that opened the doors to the creation of his new initiative, the Edu Test Group, which aims to open doors of education for students.
Said Zarrouk studied at the prestigious African Leadership Academy in South Africa. The 21-year-old entrepreneur says he's proud of his successful experience at this melting pot, an educational institution which seeks to enroll the most outstanding young leaders aged 15 to 18 from across Africa and around the world.
The African Leadership Academy, and I went there at the age of 16 and was among over 100 of the best and brightest students from all over the African continent, and I learned entrepreneurship and leadership there. While meeting various big investors and big funds, and it was just an opportunity of a lifetime. When I was living in South Africa, there's this famous quote by Nelson Mandela that said, basically, education is the only way out to move from a developing to a developed nation. Education is the sole solution to most of our social problems.
Said founded the Edu Test Group. It is a group of social and edtech-focused companies that advocate and enhance access to quality education by identifying, empowering and connecting students to scholarship foundations and financial aid at both the high school and university level.
So the idea itself started when I was 16. Basically, I had just traveled, I studied in various places, I saw the difference in educational capacities, educational opportunities in different locations, and I realized that the African continent and the Middle East in general were lacking this idea of finding financial aid, this idea of standardized prep, and this idea of e-learning.
The Tunisian businessman says he's faced many challenges in developing his business activity.
The reason why we can't really scale at the rate we want to scale is because the continent is basically mostly cash focused, and that's why we operate in a blended model in Kenya, in Morocco, in Algeria, where we receive clients at our offices and they use the online platform at the same time. But in the long run, especially when we start tackling our markets in Europe and Asia, specifically China, we're definitely going to be selling this as an online platform to the majority of our users.
EduTest has also developed a new tool using artificial intelligence, which follows up on students from when they are 5 years old until they reach university. The system tracks the learning curve through the proficiency in English and in math.
EduTest Group has over 60 employees in Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Kenya and the United Arab Emirates. Said Zarruq plans to open new offices in all continents and to hire hundreds of skilled and talented youths. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
A decade ago, the Arab uprising shook several Arab states. Longtime leaders were deposed as protesters demanded change. It all started in Tunisia after a vegetable seller, Mohamed Bouazizi, set himself on fire in an act of defiance. Ashtatal takes a look at where Tunisia stands 10 years later.
10 years ago, Mohamed Bouazizi, a fruit and vegetable seller, set himself on fire. The Tunisian's act of defiance came after his cart was confiscated by police and quickly came to represent the mass displeasure with authority. It ignited mass protests across the Arab world, which toppled several leaders. Here in the neighborhood of Sidi Bouzid, where it all started, residents say the economic situation has not improved.
I am a friend of Mohamed Bouazizi. May his soul rest in peace. He got angry and burned himself. We stood by him. We fought for our social situation, but nothing has changed until this moment.
After the revolution, there are no changes. On the contrary, every day things get worse. As you can see in Sidi Bouzid, nothing has changed after the revolution.
The protest did successfully remove former President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, who ruled the country for over 20 years. Since then, democratically elected governments have governed the country. But the country's economy has been hit hard by terrorist attacks and the COVID-19 pandemic. Here in Mohamed Bouazizi's neighborhood, people queued to buy gas. Indeed, across the country, a wide range of protests have taken place. Tunisians have taken to the streets to demand improved quality in hospitals, as well as to air their frustrations over the country's high unemployment rate. Astatal, CGTN.
And your business news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. South Africa's embattled carrier announces new board of directors. And the effects of climate change and crop diseases threaten Tanzania's cashew nut earnings.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Embattled airline South African Airways has a new board of directors in place. The financially ill airline is currently under business rescue and is desperately looking for an equity partner. From Johannesburg, here's CGTN Sumitra Naidu with more details.
6 non-executive directors have been appointed to a new board at South African Airways. It's an important milestone for the airline that was placed into business rescue on the 6th of December 2019, just over a year ago.
This is a group of individuals that have accepted this challenge of managing an airline, hopingly that after it's been restructured after the business rescue process, it will be strategic equity partner who can come in and provide a leadership team and also introduce their own technical, financial, operational expertise into the business.
Many are placing their hopes of good governance and independence with this new board. SAA has been riddled with corruption scandals and government interference for decades.
If DPE claims that they're genuine about cleaning up SAA, no member of the current SAA board should exist on this new interim board. Shouldn't be the case. Secondly, the fact that no one from Labour has been appointed, the fact that no member of civil society has been appointed, means that as far as we're concerned, we're not holding our breath. We've been through this before.
But the Department of Public Enterprises believes the mismanagement and graft at the airline is a thing of the past, and an interim board will have full oversight of the business rescue process.
This is a combination of expertise and professionals within the academic, financial, legal, and with a lot of aviation experience, with deep knowledge of the global aviation and transport in the world. So it will give the airline a new perspective that has been sorely missing at that level.
Continuity may be a far stretch though, as this is the 6th board in 11 years. Philip Saunders was also appointed as interim head in July and is the 11th CEO in 11 years. SAA counted over $1 billion in losses over the last 3 years and has failed to record a profit in over a decade. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Earnings for Tanzania's cashew nut growers are expected to fall this year due to crop diseases and their effects of climate change. Reports from the country's cashew nut board assure that nut production will be short of the target by over 20% this year, following a drop in yields. Earlier projections targeted production of at least 278,000 tons for the 2020-2021 harvest season, but board officials say this may not be reached. CGTN's Daniel Kijo has more.
Cashew nuts are one of Tanzania's key cash crops, and the country is among the top traditional cashew nut producing countries in the world. About 250,000 farmers in Lindi, Mtwara, Ruvuma, and Coast Region depend on cashew nut farming for their livelihood. But crop diseases and weather changes in plantations in Tanzania's cashew production areas have affected output over the last few years. The Cashew Nut Board of Tanzania reports show in 2018, Tanzania earned about $575 million for exporting about 313,000 tons of cashew, before declining to 225,000 tons in the next season, 2018-2019. Prior to the start of the 2020-2021 season, the government had forecast that its production would rise. However, revised projections show that the country's production in the coming season will be short of the target by 55,000 tons, going down 20%. With the new projections, cashew nut production is expected to be less by over 10,000 tons compared to the previous season's volumes. So far, the country has produced cashew nuts worth around $163.8 million, sold by 6 cooperative units in the 4 major growing regions of Mtwara, Lindi, Ruvuma, and the Coast Region. About 90% of the country's raw cashew nut is exported to India, with a small portion, which is less than 10%, is processed internally. However, the government has established a special fund to enable farmers to acquire inputs and also to increase the number of cashew nut extension offices in order to revive the sector. It is also moving to attract global buyers by trading online via the Tanzania Mercantile Exchange System. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Zimbabwe has launched an electric car, Nissan Leaf, This is as the Southern African nation prepares for the gradual shift from internal combustion vehicles to sustainable electric ones. Zimbabwe's energy regulator says the vehicles will support the country's renewable energy strategy. Here's Farai Mwakutuya with more details.
The vehicle technology of the future has arrived in Zimbabwe, and authorities hope that cars like this will become the kings of the streets. Although the country is getting on board the electric vehicle drive late, it's confident of making up ground.
We're still a long way as a country, but we want to leapfrog. There's already groundwork which was done, so we don't have much work to do in terms of breaking ground. We just have to take advantage of what has already been done.
A draft e-mobility policy has been developed to address the key questions around infrastructure and the country's long-standing power generation challenges.
We also want to promote is the use of renewable energy in charging electric vehicles. It will be pointless that we take out internal combustion engines, take out fossil fuels, but at the same time we replace it with thermal power. You know, it will be defeating the whole purpose of e-mobility. So we're going to be encouraging that service stations, embrace renewable energy.
Proposals are also being tabled to extend incentives to players that invest in e-mobility infrastructure and those that import electric vehicles.
At the moment, the electric vehicles are a bit on the high side because there's no mass production. So we want to then try and bring down the cost so that through incentives so that we can have more vehicles coming into the country.
Zimbabwe's government has banned the importation of motor vehicles that are more than 10 years old in a bid to save foreign currency but also cut carbon emissions. It's seen as a further statement of intent to promote clean energy. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Now, scorpions are very hardy animals that are resistant to hunger and thirst. They're known to populate desert regions and are avoided due to their highly potent venom. There are almost 2,000 scorpion species, but only 30 or 40 have poison that's strong enough to kill a person. However, an Egyptian man is breeding nearly 80,000 scorpions and sells their venom abroad for thousands of dollars per gram.
Several years ago, a young Egyptian man abandoned his degree in archaeology to hunt scorpions in the country's shores and deserts, extracting their venom for medical use.
My project focuses on extracting venom from scorpions and snakes, which we catch from the Egyptian deserts and shores. We catch the scorpions and collect them from farms all over Egypt. We house more than 80,000 scorpions in many farms in Egypt, away from populated areas. We extract this venom because it has many benefits, especially in manufacturing the antivenom to treat scorpion bites. This is the first product. This is considered as one of the important species. It is the most important one in the Middle East, nicknamed the death stalker. I take the scorpion from its cage, I hold it this way to control its telson and its movement so that I can control the extraction of the venom. I apply salted water with 10% concentration on the nerve centers on the scorpion's vesicles.
Caught using a colored UV light, the scorpions are exposed to a tiny electric current to stimulate the release of the venom, 1 gram of which can produce between 20,000 to 50,000 doses of antivenom.
We expose the scorpion to an electric current reaching 12 volts, 5 amperes, just to stimulate the scorpion to extract the venom. We put the electric current on one of the scorpion's vesicles or between each and every vesicle on the nerve centers. This way, the venom is released in front of us. We only get a very small amount to keep the purity of the venom. We have 1 drop of the venom.
And the poison fetches high-grade value.
More than 24 medicines are being manufactured using scorpion and snake venom all over the world. We export the venom to different European and American countries, including Virginia, Texas, and California. We also export to Belgium, Denmark, Germany, and France. The price of 1 gram reaches more than $10,000 on average, and the price depends from one type of venom to the other.
Nothing good can be said of poison. But then again, it is said poison is in everything, and the dosage is what makes it either poison or a remedy. But for Mohammed, he has found a way to make his harvest of the scorpion's poisons a benefit and possible remedy in the future. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
We have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. We take a closer look at how shea battered lives in West Africa.
The year 2020. It was a year like none before, shaped by the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa, seemingly spared the worst of it, still took a huge hit with unprecedented disruptions to healthcare, the social and economic order. Climate change also took its toll on Africa. Shifts in temperature affected food productivity and the availability of water and the overall security of the African people. The continent saw major political changes too. Several countries held successful elections despite the pandemic, while others made strides towards lasting peace. This was 2020, a year unique in so many ways. CGTN will highlight some of the top stories we covered as the year unfolded.
Invasion in several parts of the country.
Shea butter has long been considered sacred by many in West Africa because of its countless health benefits. But now an increase in global demand for shea butter is providing an opportunity for communities across Africa. Around 16 million people in Africa, particularly women in rural areas, are supported by the shea industry. Let's take a look.
This is shea butter, a pure creamy goodness which has been on skin for generations. It's also a daily staple for cooking in West Africa. To extract shea butter, this nut has to go a 15-step process. So how does this turn into this? We journeyed to northern Ghana to solve this nutritious mystery.
Den non sham ha karta non bandirgo babu to yete mala yum so point tel pepe wo besoin yum ti hinwala yawa sama da afani da kake da matan shi ya shirma masa ranya la tansa ka ta fira tan fira ma dun ka ta manun da ma lihirte dar shere dar yela kam lihirte hal ka ta te mpa tu ba sa shi bobo la zansung zang tamanamo ni yongo za dama tin shiyango zungo za ha kima akpalim gubta kati shiyama nan la jan yala tete so tele pam kar ni tete dama tun tun kar na fa na pa ma so tele yala sa ai te sura ka pa mo ka dira mar sahar ma anta bukatan ba mala la asrata akiram bela wol bistan dama ti nyala ran wole nim fo yunon to pe palen sata de ban hay de bela so kam no tuma sani yan wale mon korbe donc tamat tan le shemona Nsan ke du nte dele, ndwang nte dele. Kar de wang. De wang me. Ka te zang do non de ne mbu. Mvele yina nte yele. Nsan ke nte dele. Kar ku ka aya ja. Ka zang non tol ne. Nja Amerika ya ayen jila tangan tiri sa yin ntora nkar jara kar jaka zang tan drone nchim na nteniam wala ka ta jira da ma ban ya fa ka zang ta tuso mari nyanga ma ka zang ta tuso ma da wata bandi ben yan jia ka tunu tuchel ma di dia ta gbasani ma ta gbatu otum da me na kan ma tan zang ma ta taba kan nan go hala nan bor nan bandira ba yara yi kana danin yele ben kam yen zang eso for son de par masani je yela de par masani ba gbo vien yela ngba gbo be yira na ma na bihma ka tin nan ba fa nda shi sambe samba sambe samba yakene mbane sambe samba sambe samba.
I'm Zakaria Adam Lasira. I work with Yumza Women's Association. We are basically into shea butter production. We use shea nuts to produce it into shea butter. We have about 225 women who are into the production. So what we do is immediately you come in and you are given the shea nuts, you are supposed to pick out all bad nuts. Then after picking out the bad nuts, you then roast, where we have roasters and some of the women are even roasting. After this stage, you send it into the milling room for milling. Then it is being milled into a paste form. And after milling, you go into kneading. We produce handcrafted butter. After kneading, you get your fat emulsion, then you send it back to your stoves to boil, where you now separate the oil from the waste. After the boiling, you are supposed to filter. After this stage, we stir it till it solidifies. And after solidification, we package it into containers the buyers prefer. Really, to stay in communities like this is very difficult, where women are left to struggle on their own. So coming up as a growing child, it wasn't easy for me. When I first came to this community, most of the women, the children in the community weren't going to school because normally men say it's not important for one to educate a girl child. But after the women joining the group, they saw that it's very necessary for them to send all their girls. So currently, I'll say this particular group have helped a lot of women, and all the girl child in the community are all back to school. So I'll say what I was looking for, I have achieved part of it.
It is estimated that over 90% of shea goes into the confectionery and bakery industry. So within this industry, shea is used mainly for formulation purposes in improving the quality of formulations. In Europe, for instance, where regulations allow, shea is used as a cocoa butter equivalent for chocolate and is believed to increase the shelf life and also the formulation quality. 10% of the remaining goes into the cosmetic industry, So in the cosmetic industry, shea is favored for its high moisturizing quality as well as its anti-aging and anti-inflammatory qualities, which mainly is used in the personal care industry for body lotions, soaps, and other purposes, but mainly for the personal care industry.